Hello, and welcome to the C3 Method podcast with your host, Robert Polenic. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. Awesome. Okay, today's podcast is number 2309. We're going to talk about the importance of protein percentage for fat loss. When I have clients who track their calories in order to track our weight, meaning we want to move our weight down, we want to keep our weight the same, we want to keep our weight, move our weight up. So this is actually important for people, not only for fat loss, but for body composition maximization. They want to be as lean as they can with as much muscle as they can, and maybe they're trying to do that at a consistent body weight. Now that is often like sport athletes. They might have weight classes or a really good weight that they need for their competition. We just slowly want to build more muscle and less fat over time. And then there's people who want to push their weight up, and that would be muscle growth. For them, they are wanting to push their weight up, but probably not with body fat. They want to make sure it's muscle. So the concept of being mindful of our protein percentage, and what we're going to talk about in today's podcast, would apply to all diet structures. The reason why I wanted to focus on fat loss is because that is more common, and that's also the more common goal that people would de-emphasize protein. When somebody's trying to push their weight up and build muscle, they usually realize protein is necessary, so they place importance on that and they pay attention to it. If somebody's wanting to maximize performance while staying at the same weight or maximize body composition, again, they tend to already recognize the importance of protein. However, when someone is trying to lose weight, lose body fat, they often get hyper-focused just on calories, and unfortunately they start to hyper-focus on what they eat, as in whether something is deemed healthy or unhealthy, and that's more so related to a million different things other than protein. Some people will think of organic versus inorganic, whether it's fast or slow digesting, what the insulin response is going to be. They often determine what is right or wrong for food choices based on a million different things other than whether it has enough protein or not. I want to talk about this because it is a common mistake that people make when they're dieting for fat loss, is they don't pay attention to, or they don't understand the importance of protein percentage. When I set my clients up with their targets, we do focus on calories first. Calories are the most important. Even if you had the right amount of protein, but the calories were wrong, you're still not going to get the right outcome. Whereas if the calories are right and the protein is wrong, they might still probably get where they want to get. They're just not going to get as great of results. So if somebody's wanting to lose weight and they have their calories correct in a correct deficit, but their protein is really low, they'll make slow progress. And by the time they get there, they're probably not going to have the body composition they want. Also, the experience along the way is probably going to have some big ups and downs and some other issues. But they're going to eventually get there. It's just not going to be very efficient. If we pay attention to our calories, but we also add in paying attention to our protein, everything goes a lot better. We get there way more efficiently, a much better experience, and a much better end outcome. So for my clients, we track calories, and then I usually give them either a protein minimum or I'll give them a protein range. Some clients, they will actually overconsume protein. They'll push upwards over 40% of their calories being protein, and then they wonder why they struggle with energy and performance. And that's simply because they're not consuming enough energy nutrients, which would be the carbs and fats. Those are the ones we get energy from. Protein does a lot of things for us, but one of the things that our body really doesn't use it for is energy. So if a diet is too high in protein, their calories might be quote unquote correct, but they're gonna not feel great, they're not gonna have great performance, not gonna have great daily energy, and they're not gonna have the best experience that we would like to have. Now that's only a select few, that's not the common, where people might actually overeat protein. Most commonly people undereat protein. The reason why it's important for us to recognize this is one of the main benefits of protein is that it offsets the amount of carbohydrates and fats that we have in our diet. When we think of stored body fat is stored energy. It's energy that our body thought, I don't really need this right now, but I might need it in the future, so let me save this. And what we store is excess of carbs and fats, not protein. So when we have excess carbs and fats, compared to our expenditure, we will store some of that, and it depends on a lot of circumstances about like what percentage of it, but we do store some of that excess as body fat. In order for us to control whether we have excess carbs and fats, we would typically think, well, if I just count calories, I'm going to control my carbs and fats. The way in which that is faulty thinking is if our protein intake is really low. Let's say, for example, your protein intake is supposed to be between 25 to 33%. That's a pretty good percentage range for most people in most circumstances. So we'll use that as an example. If somebody's range is supposed to be 25 to 33% of their total calories coming from protein, that means that we're getting roughly 67 to 75% of carbs and fats. And then we would set our calorie total in the deficit range that we want for the rate of fat loss that we want. But it's set up with it in mind that the contributing carbs and fat calories are between 66 and 75%. If someone underconsumes their protein, maybe they only eat 15% of their total calories for a day for protein, that now all of a sudden means that we had 85% of our calories coming from carbs and fats. That can be enough to either lessen the deficit that we needed and we don't really make progress for that day, or it actually creates a situation of excess. Meaning, even though our total calories were where they were supposed to be, if our protein is super low, that means our carbs and fats are higher than normal, and the calorie control was meant to control the available carbs and fats to mitigate fat storage and actually promote fat loss. So if our protein is super low and we still hit our normal calories, we've actually consumed more carbs and fats than we normally would. And as I said, that lessens our progress, or it actually creates an environment of excess that can actually cause us to store more fat. When we think, even though we're controlling our calories, we would say, oh, I'm definitely losing weight. And we might find out that that's actually not the case. This is common with clients. I actually just had a client over the weekend who had a little bit of a mental break, and they've been trying their best to be adherent to their diet, but it's a struggle for them. And over the weekend, they had some social events. So they underate during the day, they overate at night, and their protein intake was really low. So for example, their protein intake is supposed to be somewhere around 180 grams, and they only had 100. So that means there was 80 grams of protein calories, which would be about 320 calories, that was then made up for in carbs and fats. And then they had another day that was even more extremely off than that. So it's unfortunate that they're in that mental struggle. So we talked about it. We're going to give them some guidelines on how to handle social situations. And during the week, they've not been following 100% of what I've been telling them. They've been over-restricting, and we want to pull that back so that way we don't get these burnout moments and these freak-out moments where we then overeat. So we don't want to have those yo-yo type responses where we go ultra low for a while, lose our mind, then go high. So we talked it out a little bit, got some ideas on how to manage that coming up in the future. But that was what they experienced, was they thought, well, I still controlled my calories, I'm still going to have fat loss days. I wanted to point out to them that they can't do that on a regular basis if they expect to get the best possible results. If they control their calories and their protein is really low, is that better than not controlling our calories? Sure, of course. But that doesn't mean that we're going to get the exact same results as if we had done everything right. If I do everything half wrong and half right, I'm not going to get all of the results of whether I did it right. So it is good that they control their calories, but that doesn't matter in the sense of, well, as long as I do this, I'm still going to get everything I want. No. we would have mitigated worse fat gains, yes, and maybe the way in which they structured it, and at least in the worst case scenario, just meant we didn't lose fat on those days. That's okay as well. But they need to be aware that, okay, I just lost 2 days of progress. So in the upcoming week, when I'm 2 or 3 or 4 days into the week and I'm wondering why my weight isn't where I want it to be, I need to remember that I took those 2 days off by having a really low protein intake, even though my calories were correct. So it's important for us to realize that maintaining an appropriate protein percentage helps us control our total carb and fat intake. And that's necessary to ensure that we get the deficit of the energy nutrients that promotes the fat loss that we're looking for. So that's really good. That's very important. Another aspect of making sure that our protein is the right percentage is that it helps satiety at our meals. We feel fuller at our meals by having protein. Protein is a harder to digest nutrient than some simple carbohydrates. So our body can feel fuller by consuming the protein at the time of the meal because compared to certain foods, especially fat-based foods, protein is less nutriently dense. And what that means is there are certain foods that are, if they're fat-dominant foods, you don't need a lot of volume of them to equate to a lot of calories. Think of peanut butter. Unfortunately, peanut butter is delicious, but 2 tablespoons is a lot of calories, but it's only 2 tablespoons. That's really small. Whereas if you got the same amount of calories from chicken breast, you would notice that you need a lot more volume of chicken breast to get the same amount of calories as 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. So protein can allow us to have larger volume in our meals, which allows us to feel fuller at the time of our meals. And then I mentioned the digestion aspect is protein can be slower digesting than some other food choices that we might choose. So if I did a meal that was really low in protein but higher in carbs, carbs digest faster than protein for the most part. And then all of a sudden I would notice I was hungrier sooner after that meal than I would normally be. So if a meal is really low in protein percentage, our body can possibly, depending on what food we eat, process that faster than normal, and all of a sudden we're hungrier sooner than normal, and that causes cravings and might cause us to make some bad decisions leading into the next meal. So those are 3 main benefits of ensuring that we have the right protein percentage in our total calorie intake, is to make sure that we actually control our carb and fat intake to get the actual fat loss that we're looking for. Having the right protein percentage makes sure that our meals feel full, and we feel full at the time of eating them. And it makes sure that our digestion rate matches our goal, so that way we're not getting too hungry between our meals and then maybe making poor decisions later in the day. So it's extremely important to pay attention to your protein intake. Make sure it's the right percentage. So if you're tracking calories, make sure you track protein as well. And they are equally important. So controlling your calories is necessary, yes, but make sure your protein percentage is correct as well. Awesome. If you ever need any help with nutrition information or training or anything, you can check out our services on our website, which is www.c3method.com. Right now, you can go to the website and you can sign up for a free consultation. You and I can chit-chat, talk about your goals, and see if we would work well together towards those goals. You can do that on the website, www.c3method.com. The 3 is spelled out T-H-R-E-E, so it's C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. Awesome. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people that know about it, the more people can be helped by it. If you like the information we share on the podcast, we do share other and new and different information on our social media channels on Instagram and YouTube. And you can find us under the name C3 Method, again with 3 spelled out T-H-R-E-E. Okay, well that's it. So as always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.